Hey everybody, Edythe Richards here. It is mid-July 2023 as we are recording this episode of the new Myers-Briggs Question Corner. I am back after over a year. Really appreciate all of you who have stuck with me all these years. Thank you so much. I am back with a new co-host, and we've been doing some really exciting things behind the scenes to bring you all some great content. So sit back. This is our inaugural episode, and I think you're going to like it. Hello, folks, and welcome to the new Myers-Briggs Question Corner. I am Edythe Richards.
And I'm Marc Matthey.
And we are very pleased to be here. It has been a while. We have been on hiatus for over a year now. I have been hosting this podcast since 2016 with David Terrace, who was my Scottish producer and friend. And unfortunately, he couldn't continue due to some health reasons, but I got to know Marc in the meantime. And Marc, you are just so bubbly and full of energy. You have a great radio voice, and you're just an all-around nice guy. So I asked if you'd be interested in co-hosting with me, and fortunately you agreed.
I'm really excited to be co-hosting with you, Edythe. Edythe is such a source of knowledge and expertise, and I'm thrilled to learn from her every time I interact with her. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a career teacher and I'm a football coach. I've been teaching for 18 years and I've been coaching for 20. I'm living my best life as we're recording this during the summer. So I'm not going into school every day. So I'm really, really relaxed, excited, rejuvenated. So I'm really, really excited. I'm looking forward to this conversation we're going to have about Myers-Briggs. Although I'm not a Myers-Briggs expert, my novice knowledge with MBTI has given me a lot of self-awareness and has helped me in my life tremendously. So thrilled to join you, Edythe, on the Myers-Briggs Question Corner.
Yeah, thank you, Marc. I'm so glad you're here. We are both fans of the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI. I myself have been using it in my work as a career counselor for about 20 years now, and I use it a lot in my work with human resources and leadership development too. So I am a master practitioner, which is really just a fancy way of saying that I know quite a bit about personality in terms of theory and application. So folks, if you're tuning in and you have a question about personality or the MBTI, please get in touch. We'd love to answer your question on air.
I agree. I think one of the most important and most valuable things you can have in this world is knowledge of yourself and knowledge of others. I truly think our ultimate goal in life is to live a life of full authenticity and the use of our true selves to make a difference in this world. That's why I think this podcast can be so valuable, because we're discussing things that will lead to a sense of wholeness. Edythe, as a master practitioner, I wonder if you could explain to our listeners the value of this authenticity and finding who you are through MBTI.
Yeah, authenticity is the word there, indeed. Marc, I grew up sort of like a fish out of water, I guess. I was different from everybody else in my family, and I was always getting, or I guess I felt like I was getting pointed at for these differences. Like, oh, Edythe, you're so messy, or why didn't you remember to do whatever task it was I was supposed to do? Or why can't you just stick to this one activity and learn to master it? Or you need to do whatever this is better. So there was a lot of that in my childhood, or at least that's how I felt. I thought that something was wrong with me. And part of this is just maturity and, my own sense of independence and getting on with life and having certain life experiences. But I'll tell you, when I found out about the Myers-Briggs in my late 20s, it was incredibly validating. I just remember reading the description for my type, and I couldn't believe it. I felt like this is what I'd been missing my whole life. So now I know why I do the things I do, why I didn't always get along with certain people or why I felt like the black sheep in my family.
Hmm.
It helped me to approach things differently with my family members and empathize with them in a way that I hadn't before. And now with the knowledge and experience that I have, I'm trying to bring that to other people and help them use the Myers-Briggs as a tool to help them understand themselves better and to become more aware of the interactions and relationships they have with other people. And that can help us to make better decisions for ourselves, to communicate with people who are like us and also appreciate people who are different from us. And this isn't a tool to categorize or pigeonhole people, but I do believe when it's used correctly, it can truly empower people.
Wow, that is great. Like what you just mentioned, Edythe, about the impact of self-knowledge, but also the understanding of others and how that can really help us make certain decisions in life and kind of help us steer our life in a way that can lead to a level of success, and most importantly, understanding. And I think in this, as we're moving into this world with a lot of the divisiveness that's going on, understanding is so important. And one of the tenets I live by and I've always lived by is know thyself and put thyself in the right environment for oneself, right? So Edythe, I don't know if you've ever watched the cartoon G.I. Joe back in the day. Did you ever watch that cartoon?
Yes, I sure did. G.I. Joe.
G.I. Joe was great, right? And
Yeah.
like the majority of cartoons and those sorts of things, there was always like they always had the cartoon for about 25 minutes, and you knew the last 5 minutes there was a lesson, like there was a
Yep.
moral lesson that
Yep.
was going to be put on there. So I remember the end of G.I. Joe, they would always say, they would have some sort of life lesson, and then the kids would say, and knowing is half the battle. So I remember there was like let's say there's this episode that they're having there, and the kids are playing and they're in a struggle or something like that that's going on, and somebody commits a foul, right? Or they start arguing and those things start to occur and there's some sort of confrontation. G.I. Joe would then come up and say, hey guys, we don't need that. The next time you get angry over a bad play, remember you need teamwork to win, not arguments. And the kids would all say, now we know. And then everybody would say together, and knowing is half the battle.
Half the battle. Yep.
Self-knowledge and knowledge of others is truly half the battle. And when you have that information, it helps you make decisions that work for others, work for you and for others, which to me is really the other half of the battle. And this kind of all leads to us just being, really happy and content.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, knowing is half the battle. I remember that well, and knowledge is power. And this all translates into knowing your personality type. That's going to give you all sorts of insights about yourself. And this is what will lay the foundation for deeper personal understanding and self-awareness. And that can lead to better communication, and it can for sure help with our career management. Just one example of how it can help you in action.
And it just helps you just in life in general, right?
For sure. So since this is our first episode, Marc, I think it might be helpful to share a little bit about ourselves with our listeners. And if you're new to this podcast or new tuning in, so I'm an ENFP type. So this stands for extroverted, intuitive, feeling, and perceiving. So we're going to talk more about, the dichotomies and the preferences. But in a nutshell, people who are ENFP types, we tend to be quite enthusiastic. We are very relationship focused, and we are driven by clever new ideas. We love to come up with out of the box solutions. We love brainstorming and sharing our ideas with others. And I think many of us work in creative fields or are drawn to the arts in some way. We tend to be curious about people. And I'm proud to say that nearly every ENFP type I've met is, at their hearts, they're a non-judgmental person, as non-judgmental as we can be in today's world. We just love people. We love hearing people's stories and trying to figure out what drives them and motivates them. And we can be quite quite enthusiastic about sharing everything. And I think that on the downside, this can easily overwhelm some other people, especially people who are more introverted, because we can be intense. But really, we don't mean to be. At our core, we tend to be motivators. We want to inspire people. We want to inspire people to do what motivates them. We're not really interested in trying to control people. We're not interested in routines or monotonous work. And if you try to force us into a box or try to micromanage us, it's just not going to work. And as a result, I don't see many ENFP types in corporate type career environments or in office settings. And I tell you, Marc, like I said before, when I first found out that this is my type, it absolutely changed my life, incredibly validating for me. And I suddenly understood why I don't get along with certain people and why I couldn't stick with just one task or job or boyfriend back in the day. I was constantly seeking something new. And this is a struggle I've heard from a lot of other ENFP types as well. So for the past 20 years, I've been on this quest to bring the Myers-Briggs and type theory to others and use it to help people understand naturally who they are so they can grow and make better decisions for themselves. So Marc, I'd love to hear about your type and your journey.
Absolutely. Just have to really just comment on something that you mentioned. I can only imagine how validating and how empowering it is to realize that there's nothing wrong with you, that you just interact in these natural ways. And that's the reason why you might struggle. I don't think we necessarily have an issue with struggling, right? I just think we need to know why we do. And I think once we know why we do it, then we're kind of in a good position. So I just think that's so validating. What you said about understanding your type. And, when I think about mine, like I said, I'm a novice. So as I think through it, I definitely think I'm an introvert. I definitely am an intuitive. I know that. I think I lean more feeling, and I think I'm definitely a perceiver since everybody tells me that I'm late. But but like I said, I'm coming this through through a novice lens. So could you just help me, Edythe, and the audience understand, how would you figure out what type you are, just in general?
Yeah, great question. So to find your best fit type or your true type, of course, you need to take the assessment, the real deal Myers-Briggs assessment, and you need to have a conversation with a type practitioner who can explain it to you in a way that you can hear. So when you take the assessment, what you get is what we call your reported type. And then you have a conversation with your practitioner, and through that conversation and your understanding of the 4 dichotomies of the Myers-Briggs, you can come up with your best fit type. Mm-hmm. Now, there are a number of free assessments that you can take online, but they aren't the real deal. They're not statistically reliable or validated for a particular purpose. And a lot of these conversations happen around career development and decision-making, the conversation that you have with your practitioner. But with that said, free online assessments you can take, and to anybody listening in, you can make a first guess of your type as well. I do want to convey, though, that there's this concept of preferences. So think about it like this. We all have the ability to use both our right hands and our left hands, but it's a lot easier to use your dominant hand. So you can sign your name naturally without thinking, and of course that's your dominant hand. Now, if you use your non-dominant hand to sign something, you have to really think about it. You have to think about how you're holding the pen and how you're forming the letters. And it's going to take some practice, and it's probably not going to be as nice and neat and clean as your handwriting is with your dominant hand. So this is the same idea with preferences. So I have a preference. My preference is for my right hand. I'm right-handed. And I have a preference for extroversion. I use introversion every day, but it's not quite as easy or as natural for me to do so. So that's this idea of preferences here. And with the Myers-Briggs, the reality is that we all fall on this spectrum, and we all exhibit behaviors that are associated with both sides of the spectrum, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. We're not incapable of doing either one, right? We just have a preference. We're natural. It's like I'm right-handed too, right? So like I can write with my left hand. I just don't feel natural. I mean, I can write with my left hand, but I don't feel natural doing it. I'd rather just write with my right hand. Same thing in sports. A lot of times in sports, you have like certain handed dominance or footed dominance, right? Like you are natural, but if you're in a situation where in order to become a better basketball player, soccer player, that sort of stuff, you might need to develop your left leg or your left hand because it's going to make you more effective. You have to be very conscious in how you do that. So I think I definitely have a preference for introversion.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Like, what is being introvert? Am I shy? Because I don't think anybody who knows me knows I'm not shy, right? But is that what it means?
Well, that's a common misconception about this introversion, extroversion dichotomy. But actually, the reality is this is all about energy source. So if you prefer introversion, you're energized more internally than externally. You recharge your batteries by spending time alone. You probably prefer to spend time with small groups of people and small get-togethers over large parties or events. Some introverted types even avoid social functions because they get drained so easily by a lot of external stimulation and people. And introverted types tend to enjoy a lot of solitary activities. They might be introspective and take a little more time to make decisions and connect with other people. And you mentioned being shy or reserved. And some introverted types may be seen as shy or reserved, for example, the more clear ones, especially. But extroverted types are much more social. They tend to enjoy being around a lot of people. They're energized externally. So they're more about meeting new people. They're energized by taking action and trying new things. So one way to spot an extrovert is to watch them thinking out loud because we tend to form ideas and opinions while we're discussing them, or we do our thinking while we're speaking. And a lot of extroverted types might be uncomfortable with silence or prolonged silence. So you might find them just talking about anything to fill the silence or saying, well, okay. And so they're saying these things just to fill this kind of awkward silence.
So that's what it is. So when somebody is talking out loud, they're thinking as they talk, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I do this quite a lot. And it's almost like for me, it's making things real. Like I'm just talking about this and there's nobody next to me, or I'm not talking necessarily to anybody, but I'm vocalizing it. And yeah, it helps me, I guess.
Well, I can tell you that's definitely not me, right? So but I can tell you when I'm around that and I need to figure out how not to listen to that, or maybe just help them. Maybe I need to be more of an advisor as they're kind of going because they're thinking as they're talking, because I definitely know I tend to come up with my thoughts and then say it. And so I'll come up with it's complete. I don't really need your help. I've already completed my thoughts. I definitely think I'm more of an introvert when it comes to that. But some of the things that you mentioned, Edythe, just about I'm an introvert, man. I'm the dude that's sitting at Denny's by himself. I'm that guy that's randomly in section G1 of the movies, watching the movie by himself, and I'm good. I am not weird. You don't have to put me on any type of list. I'm not a weirdo. I just really, really enjoy not being in groups, right? So I think that really, really defines me. And what you talked about, energy, I totally agree with you with that. Just the idea of just being in groups. I can give you a good 45 minutes. I can give you 30 to 45 minutes. But after that, I'm looking for an exit strategy, right? And so I could definitely tell that I gain my energy in the Denny's, at the movies by myself processing, right? But then when I'm in a certain group and there's a bunch of chit chat, I struggle. I struggle a lot.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. You know, and the point I want to get around, yeah, you mentioned this, you're like, I'm not a weirdo, there's nothing wrong with me. And yeah, that's the important thing to remember. It's, you know, just like what you were saying, well, I can help the extroverts in processing. Well, maybe we don't need any help.
Well,
Need any help
you're right.
processing. It's just kind of who we are. And it's just like if I see you sitting in Denny's or sitting in the movies by yourself, it doesn't mean that you're sad or upset. And I don't have
Good
to
point.
feel sorry for you, right?
Good
Yeah,
point. Good point.
yeah.
I will say this, that like if you were to poll like 100 students of mine and said, do you think Mr. Matthew is introverted or extroverted? 99% of people would say that I'm extroverted. Like I guess I confuse them with that. Like I show extroverted qualities, could be because of my job or certain things. So they're always thinking that I'm extroverted, not introverted. Like, can you explain that phenomenon to us?
Yeah, well, this comes back to, you know, we're all existing on this spectrum, right? And I hear this a lot. A lot of people take on behaviors of their opposite for a lot of different reasons. And, you know, in your case, Mark, like you have to extrovert as part of your job. Like you have to be
Mm,
around all these kids and you've developed a certain personality. But I also think that probably when you have been doing that for hours and hours every day, you know, you're going to get a little more easily exhausted,
mm,
possibly more so than an extroverted type would. So, you know, again, just life experiences are going to have you take on behaviors of your opposite just to survive in this world, right? It's the same for me. Like in my own case, I was raised by a very introverted mother, and she
mm,
encouraged a lot of solitary activities, not very many
mm.
social activities. So I learned how to kind of hone my introversion from a young age. And there's sometimes now that people mistake me for an introvert, just like you get mistaken for an extrovert. But the point is, I think that personality and behavior aren't always the same.
That's a really good thought. One thing that I was thinking about as we were talking about this is, do individuals of similar preferences get along better than those who maybe share different preferences?
Yeah, I hear this question a lot too. And my answer is not necessarily, because there's a lot that goes into relationships or friendships that the Myers-Briggs doesn't measure. And chemistry is one of these things that the Myers-Briggs doesn't measure, or any personality inventory for that matter. You know, I have great work and personal relationships with people who are both similar to me and people who are very different from me. I have an ISFJ coworker and an INFJ coworker, and I mean, I just don't think I can live without them. And my INTJ coworker too. And then my significant other is an ISFJ. But of course, I have ENFP friends too. And of course, there are some ENFP types who I just can't stand for whatever reason. So there's so much more that goes into these things than our Myers Briggs type.
That's a good point. Because you're this type, I'm automatically going to get along or not get along with you because there's other aspects of us besides our personality that determines how we behave and how we get along and that sort of stuff. I do think though, when I'm around individuals, like for instance, I know we're going to get into some of these, I think just like, feeling types, when I get involved with those type of individuals or individuals who are perceivers or that sort of stuff, or intuitives, which I think I am, like we tend to get along because I get them. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna like, if I'm an introvert, we're gonna love the idea of like being in our own small group and really processing things down all the way down to the depths, right? All the way
Yep.
down to the bottom to the bedrock. Like I dig
Yep.
that person, I get that person versus the other person who's an extrovert, all they're doing is just talking random thoughts and I'm struggling trying to piece them together
Yeah.
and that sort of stuff. So what's funny about you and I as we've been interacting over this past year is we've gotten along because we are actually the same type in the final three. So we're both intuitives, we're both feeling, and we're both perceiving. We're just different on the extrovert and the introvert scales. So I would love for you to kind of explore what makes us like very similar because of those particular personality preferences that we have. And then also, how may we share different things with individuals who might be different than us in the final three preferences?
Yeah, so great points overall, Mark. And yeah, let's just look at the other dichotomies briefly. So you mentioned intuition, so sensing and intuition. Let's look at this one first. So this is the second dichotomy of the Myers-Briggs, and this is about how we receive information. So sensing types pay more attention to information that comes to them through their five senses. So whatever they can see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. Intuitives pay more attention to patterns and possibilities that we see from the information we receive. So we rely on our hunches or our intuition. And we tend to solve problems by leaping through like different ideas and possibilities. So we're looking at the big picture before the details. And we may be accused of having our head in the clouds or not following directions or not being practical or realistic. And our sensing friends are very detail oriented and pragmatic, and they work through problems using this step-by-step approach. So that's the SN dichotomy in a nutshell. And then if we're talking about J and P, so this one is really interesting too. This is the fourth pair talking about leaping over things here. I'm going to just leap right over to the J and the P. This is the fourth pair, and it's about how you live your outer life. So judging types or Js tend to be outwardly firm and direct and opinionated a lot of the time. They tend to be organized, they plan ahead, they don't like surprises, and they don't really like unanswered questions too much. Js want closure. Perceiving types tend to be more open-ended and spontaneous. They're more adaptable and receptive, and they're more casual in their words and their presentations than judging types. So I think where I was going with this was about the SJ types, because these folks are really different from we NP types. So SJ types, sensing, judging types, these are the folks who, there can be a lot of contention between SJs and NP types. But SJ types, these are the folks who provide a lot of grounding and stability. They're responsible and they need things to be in order before they do any of the fun stuff, right? And we NP types, Mark, we are all about the fun. We want to enjoy ourselves. We don't mind change. We don't mind things being a bit unsettled. So it's easy to see where these two especially can kind of get on each other's nerves, but it's also really easy to see kind of where we need each other, right? And so when you were talking earlier about, finding other types who are similar to you and really getting each other, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's so validating to find somebody of your own type, and you can so easily communicate with that person, sometimes like without even words, because you just get each other. With people who are opposites, it might not be quite as easy to get each other initially, but just relationships with these folks offer a lot of opportunities for personal growth for ourselves too.
Absolutely. I could just see it with just time, right? Like we look at that perceiving preference, right? And looking at time and closure. Like,
yes.
I feel like both of us, for time, like I look, for full disclosure for those individuals in the audience, when we're both perceivers and we say it's 1:30, yeah, we might not be there at 1:30. And we try to be there at 1:30. And I don't think it's a disrespect of time. I think it's how we value time. I think it's how we feel that if we're trying to give time for possibilities, time for things to different happen, we want to be able to offer everything at the meeting. We don't want there to be any closure to that. And so I think we're affording. So if I see something or I get in a different, so I'll give you an example. If I talk to my brother, right, and we're talking about what we're going to talk about at the meeting, like I'm going to give time for that. Like I know I'm going to be late, right? But what if that was going to be information that we can use to better the podcast or to do certain things like that? That's the way I look at time. Versus I feel like a lot of my, my judging friends, I feel like they would just cut off the thing, or they would look at their clock or get very antsy and be like, hey, I gotta go. See ya. And I would be like, well, we're having such a good conversation. Why
Mm.
would you allow the time to take away what could be learned? But it's just because we're different, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And I, as you're talking about this, I'm reminded of how, like, I'm still a perceiver, but I've been in these J environments for so long. I've been in these judging environments for so long. I've really like used the opposite side of myself to kind of hone myself that way. And I'm so
Mm.
sometimes I feel like I'm just this taskmaster with the time thing too. And I think I'm so concerned about respecting other people's time, i.e., the J's time, that
Yep.
I've gotten to be this person who is normally like not late, or I'm like, okay, we're out of time now. I'm so overly
Mm.
focused on that. And it is definitely not natural for me. Like, I want to be this casual person, and I want to have these good conversations like you were talking about. But on the other hand, I think it's helped me too, to just be more mindful of tasks that I need to get done, and responsibilities that I have, and things like that.
Yeah. It's like we all need each other. Like,
For
one of the
sure.
things that I always talk about, like when we are, say, we're in college or even today, and we get in groups, I'm not looking for an NP. Like I'm looking for an SJ. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like, I don't know if it's an opposites attract deal, but I know an SJ is going to get the job done. I know they're going to try to be productive. I know they're going to set a deadline for things. They're going to provide me with things that's going to allow the best to occur from me, right? And so, like, I definitely feel like we all need each other. Whether it's, I think it's important in the intuitive stage, where I think it's important for us to have our ideas and possibilities and those sorts of things mentioned, because it might actually help us solve this big problem that we have. We can't just continue to do the things the way we've always done that, which a lot of times censors will talk about. Well, we've always done it this way. But if they afford the time for those intuitives to share their ideas, we might come up with a better way. So we all need each other in different team dynamics, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And let me just say that I think it is amazing, Mark, how two NP types have actually pulled ourselves together to actually do the work that's needed to be done for this podcast, and actually have a product now, because I tell you,
Yeah.
it was a lot. So I think congratulations to both of us. But now that we're talking about some of these things, and I think we've each provided some information about our own personality types. What about work environments? Like, Mark, what do you think are some of the best work environments for you that work with your natural gifts?
Ooh, Edith, I love that word, man. I love the phrase you just said there, gifts, because really these preferences are gifts, and it's gifts that we give to our environments. The more we look at our preferences as gifts and strengths to make us better, we will make such a great difference in our environment. So, when I look at myself, I'm an introvert. I like to process information and attempt to figure things out. So, in any work environment that allows me the opportunity and the time to process is good for me. I can't be in environments that force me to socialize too much. This kind of drains my energy. You know what I mean? Like, it just
Yeah.
drains me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very typical for introverted types to say that. In fact, I don't know if you or, our listeners know this, but introverted types' brains work differently. And one way for this, Mark, is that you're actually more sensitive to dopamine than we extroverts are. And dopamine is that pleasure seeking chemical or neurotransmitter in our brains, and it
Hmm.
provides external rewards like earning money or climbing the corporate ladder, if we're looking at workplace rewards, working on high profile projects and things like that. So for we extroverted types, when dopamine levels spike, we tend to get excited, and we get more talkative, and we're more motivated to seek these types of external rewards. But for introverted types, it's not that you have less dopamine, it's that you tend to get overstimulated by dopamine.
Makes
So
sense.
it's not really a surprise that, you don't want to be in environments where you have to socialize too much. That's not going to be where you'll be at your best. And it's best to be in places where you're not going to have as many distractions, and workplaces that allow you to be more independent and not interact with a lot of large groups of people all the time. You're going to do much better with workplaces that allow you independent thought and working with just smaller groups of people or one-on-one.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm a strong um introvert, because as you're speaking, a lot of these things that you're mentioning really does apply to me. As I think about myself in the next preference, definitely think I'm an intuitive, and I think I'm a strong intuitive. I love to figure things out and look for the possibility of things. Matter of fact, I'll tell people, like, when I'm tired, like, ask me a question to figure things out, because it gives me energy that I need to be able to get to. Like, it's like I wake up, I get out of my slumber if I can figure things out. So I know I'm very, very strong in that. And I think that's where I get my strong sense of helping others reach their potential, just because I love to figure out things and possibilities for people. And what's funny? I always thought that I had this like unique ability, like I was some unique alien out there, like Superman, with this special talent to help people reach their potential. Like, that was my thing. That was my superpower. Nobody else in the world has that, until I found out that no, it's just my personality type. Other people have it too. I thought I was Superman, and I realized there were other Superman.
Yeah. There's a few of you out there, I would say. And I would also say, don't underestimate your personality type, because it is your gift. And it is your superhuman strength, and it's what makes you unique. And, if we can all just apply our strengths, it's going to make this world a better place. It can make us feel like we're superhuman beings.
Man, that's Edythe. That is, as a teacher, I'm getting excited about what you're saying, right? Because that's something I always tell my students. I always tell them there's something special in all of us. There's a unique gift that is dying to come out of us. And when we let that gift out, we do feel like we're superhuman, right? So I would say my superhuman gift, if I had to like put it all together, would be to help individuals or systems reach their potential, help them see the possibilities of their life, and then help everybody live in harmony. Like, I feel that's what makes me different. And if I had work environments that allows me to do that, like, I think that they would see me as Superman too as well. And so I think that's really, really important. And if, boy, I wish that was I really wish there was a job that said, hey, you get a chance to be this, because I think that I would be able to let my whole self out. It would almost be like I'm living a dream.
Yeah, that would be ideal, wouldn't it? And it's easy to kind of feel like we're the anomaly, or even that, on the negative side of things, like somehow we're in the wrong when we're surrounded by these different personality types, like people who are different from us. And these are the times I think that we can struggle because we don't fit in, or because we're different, or it feels like we don't fit in, or we're not included, or whatever. And this has definitely happened to me on many occasions. And I'm going to bet that it's happened to you too, Marc.
Yeah, like when I think about it, some areas that I struggle are inflexible environments, like environments that are totally inflexible. Areas that are resistant to change, I hate that. Areas that are too traditional and hold on to the mantra of this is how we always do things. Like, ooh, that gets my blood running.
Yes, for real. Like a lack of innovation and not allowing for creative ideas. Very stifling to me too. I agree with you.
When I look at my two professions that I've been in, teaching and coaching, coaching kind of allows me to help students reach their potential with few limitations. On the other hand, I get stifled with the administrative task of teaching, emails, grading, lesson planning, the same old, let's get into the data meetings, random stuff, random staff room banter. I hate that.
No.
I try to avoid those places like the plague. Like it's really, really important. Like I just really get really frustrated with education's resistance to change to help students reach their full potential. That really kills me. One thing I used to always say is if Benjamin Franklin were to come back to life again, he would be so confused with all the advancements we have, planes, cars, electricity. He'd be like, oh, I can use this iPad for my notes instead of this, whatever little pen that they had to used to dip in all the time. But he would walk into schools and then he would be like, oh my goodness, like I feel safe. This place makes me feel like home. You know what I mean? Because it hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's funny. And I bet it would be, yeah, he'd probably be pretty much at home more in like higher education, I think, than in the K-12 system. But that's just me. That's just my thought. Yeah, it can be annoying in some of these work environments for personality types like ours, because we are like the change agents. We're the innovative types of people. We want everybody to get along and have harmony. And I really try hard to give these SJ types or other types of people, I try to give them grace in these situations, because just as their styles and the way they approach work is annoying and frustrating to me, I'm sure I'm very frustrating to them. So I try to meet people halfway as much as I can.
So that's a great like advice for people. So Edythe, what work environments allow you to use your personality gifts, and what work environments are your greatest source of frustration?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, I'm very similar to you, Mark. If I had to sum it up, there are two must-haves for me at work. First is a friendly workplace, and the second is work that allows me to be creative. So first, like if I'm surrounded by mean people or people who are trying to command and control me and undermine me or compete with me, that is just an instant no-go for me. I have said more than once at work, just be nice. And it's amazing how difficult that seems to be for some people. I also just can't handle places that will force me into a box where I'm expected to just sit at a cubicle and do routine work day after day with no sense of purpose. And I have been in workplaces like this where you're just expected to sit there and read Excel spreadsheets or contracts, and you don't have any context for what you're reading. And honestly, like I felt like an idiot when I'm in those places. Like there's some kind of secret language that I'm just not getting. And trying to greet people and smile and strike up a conversation with people, that didn't work either, because they're just looking at me like I'm some kind of freak. And like, why is this person talking to me? And that's how I felt. And these types of work environments, they may be great places to work for SJ types, especially like an ISTJ type, but these are not the best types of workplaces for me. You're just not going to get the best out of me if you put me in some kind of box and you don't talk to me and you try to restrict my creative ideas and my input. And that's why I think a lot of corporate environments can be tough places for ENFPs and INFPs like us, Mark.
Like it's, oh man, I don't know if you felt me like cringing as you were talking, and
I felt it for sure, because I was cringing.
It's unfortunate, and I know we're coming to the end of the episode, and but I just want to briefly just talk a little bit about what a missed opportunity we have in our work environments. Like we're spending 8 hours of our day, and a majority of people more than that. They're not just spending 8 hours of their day, but they're spending 3 to 5 other hours outside of the work like structure in their work task, right? And we're missing out on an opportunity where we can actually have people have their strengths and their personality gifts come out in those areas. Like, could you imagine if everybody was in an area where they had their personalities were valued, their personality gifts were, they had time and space to provide those particular gifts to their work environments, how much more productive we can be, right? And that's the thing, right? Everybody wants to be productive. Then why do we spend our time with people doing the things that we don't want them to do? Now, this is my intuitive speaking, so I'm sure my sensors are like, dude, we can't do that because that's like it's never been done. It's impossible to do. But I think there's a way that we can I think it's possible for us to create in work environments where people can bring themselves to the workplace. And if we're able to get enough people to do that, we would increase productivity to a point where, I don't know, like everybody's making money. Like I don't know why we have to be in work environments where people spend the majority of their days doing something they don't want to do. Frustrates me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's ideally, I mean, that would be great if we can all kind of divide ourselves up in this way to be more productive. And yeah, for sure, that's going to be tied to revenue here. And, it's just a win-win for everybody if we could do that. And, one thing I'm thinking about when you're talking about that, Mark, is maybe some other INFP types who might be tuning in. And maybe you have some thoughts for them in terms of, advice you could give, or, if they're feeling burned out or stressed out, how they might deal with that. What do you think, Mark? What advice would you give to our INFP friends who are tuning in?
I would say, if just general advice for any personality type for me. So regardless of whether or not you're an INFP type, is bring your personality type to your job. Like, I just went off on my soapbox about how the work environment should fit us, right? But we kind of all know that might be a little bit unrealistic. If you don't have that opportunity for that work environment to change, then you change your person. Like, you need to find opportunities within your workday to bring your personality type to your job. So if you look at a lot of INFPs, right, we want to bring out the best in others. We want to help them reach their potential. Where in my job can I bring that strength to the job? How might I bring value to our team and to the bottom line? That's the key. If you can show how your strength can increase the bottom line, your company will allow you to do more of it. So I need to be thinking, how do I use my natural strengths of bringing people together, bringing out visionary ideas to the table, and being a creative problem solver to add value to my company? And what I will see is, the more I bring value to my company through my personality strengths, my company might carve out a space for me to use my personality strengths more and pay me for it, right? So even if I don't even get paid more, these activities will give me more energy and joy to do the job tasks that I really, really don't want to do. So remember, your personality strengths frees you, gives you energy, and gives you joy. So we should use them. I've spoken on how the schooling work environment oftentimes stifles me because it doesn't fit my natural INFP type. But I find ways to help students and teachers reach their potential nonetheless, right? I'm going to find time for what I call Mr. Matthey's life lessons. And any students who happen to be listening to that, they know that if they're in my class, they're going to get life lessons, right? So, I've been a marketing teacher, I've been a leadership teacher, I've been a PE teacher, and I've always given space and time for Mr. Matthey's life lessons. I'm going to find ways to contribute my personality strength to my job. So that would be my advice to all. Find more ways to contribute who you are to your work.
Yeah. Well said, Mr. Matthey here. And, as you were mentioning earlier, just finding ways to bring your personality to work, and just find ways to do that, even if it's not natural to your type. And as much as, I know we all want to do this, as much as it is ideal to be able to bring your full self to work, and as much as people in these work environments say that's what they want, it's not always possible for one reason or another. And, I think there's a lot of leaders out there who say these things, but their behavior doesn't follow the words that come out of their mouths. And I'm saying this to leaders because leaders are the ones who are setting the stage here. And there's some of us who try very hard to be ourselves and fit into the workplace. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't work out. And it leaves us feeling drained and unappreciated. And that, it affects our morale and our productivity. And it hurts the business ultimately. So I just want to say this for all the folks who are tuning in, who can relate to this struggle at some point. You need to prioritize your well-being. And maybe that means finding a different workplace or even a different career path. I don't want to end, because I know we're starting to wrap things up. I don't want to end on a sour note here, but I do want to let everyone tuning in know that there is hope. There are people out there who truly do want to see you succeed. And there are people out there who truly do want to help.
I agree with that, Edythe, right? And the thing about it is, it's a level of agency, right? Like, let's switch who's responsible for our happiness. Instead of looking at our leaders need to be responsible for our happiness, right? Or our manager, why can't they put me in a better environment? Switch the agency. You take the agency, right? And then you figure out ways that you can apply some of these things to your life. Like, there is hope. People do want to see you succeed. They may just not know how to do it. But I think what Myers-Briggs and this idea of personality strengths and how you can bring that out into the world, what that allows you to do is allow you to take the ownership to then create that and to then show your leaders how they can create an environment that best works for you. So that way it's a win-win for everybody. So I love that point.
Right. And talk about how empowering that is and that could be. Yeah. And on that note, thank you, Marc. That is a great way to end our episode here. And for the folks tuning in, thank you for staying with us till the end. We are going to have more great conversations like this. So please, please, please take a moment to leave us a comment, subscribe, share this with your friends. You can reach out to me on atopcareer.com or on LinkedIn. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye for now. Stay safe and be well, folks.
Thanks for tuning in. Follow us on social media and your favorite podcast platform.
And please reach out to me on LinkedIn and on my website, atopcareer.com, for more updated content. While the Myers-Briggs and MBTI are trademarks of the Myers-Briggs Foundation, viewpoints expressed here are our own.